going on, folks? This is Mr. Coleon Noir, and this is going to be my shooting review, head-to-head comparison of the Glock 19 and the Walther PPQ. I did an initial tabletop review of these two firearms, and I have to say the Walther PPQ held its own. So I wanted to go ahead and put these guns through their paces, and Brandon from Moderno.com went ahead and lent me his PPQ, and I grabbed my Glock 19 and kind of ran these two guns side to side, and I'll come out with the winner at the end of this video. So, with that being said, let's get on to the review. I have to say, in doing this shooting review, I was really surprised with the turnout in terms of the recoil sensation that these two guns generate. And really what it would boil down to was the fact that I really anticipated that both these guns were going to feel exactly the same, but that wasn't the case. The Glock 19 is a soft shooter. It's always been noted as a soft shooting 9mm handgun, and I fully expected the Walther PPK to do the same. But unfortunately, I have to say that with the Walther PPQ, you notice the recoil more on the Walther than you do on the Glock. And I think a lot of that is attributed to the bore access. You get a higher access to the bore on the Glock than you do with the Walther. And I think in turn what ends up happening is you get a lot more muzzle flip with the Walther than you do with the Glock 19. The Walther is still an enjoyable gun to shoot, but you do notice the recoil on the Walther a lot more than you do on the Glock 19.
Yeah, it's so long.
Now, there's a popular saying that once you felt one Glock trigger, you felt them all. I have to disagree with that. I could pick up 4 Gen 9 Glock 19s, and they each have a stock trigger, and each of those triggers will feel different. And I have a 3.5 pound disconnect ghost trigger in my Glock 19, and to be honest with you, I don't really notice the difference in the trigger pull versus the stock trigger pull. But I will say the Glock trigger is a good trigger. It's not exceptional, but it's a good trigger, and it does what it needs to do. Now, the reset can get a little slappy in that it kind of forcefully resets itself against the palm of your finger, so it's a little hard to gauge. Now, when we start talking about the Walther PPQ, on the other hand, the trigger is a lot more comfortable. It has a more solid feeling trigger, it's a lot smoother, and the reset is easier to gauge than the Glock 19. The reset smoothly comes out versus the Glock 19's reset, which can be a little springy and kind of hard to kind of really gauge when you've actually engaged that reset, even though it is very audible and very tactile. But I have to say that as far as the trigger is concerned, I had to give it to the PPQ from a firing situation. Now, on my Glock 19, I have the factory Glock night sights on mine. And I have to say, they aren't exceptional, but they're light years ahead of the basic stock U dot box or whatever you call it on your regular Glocks. I can't stand those sights. Now, these sights are pretty decent. There isn't much play between the front post and the back notch, and it can get a little kind of tedious to get your sights lined up. But for the most part, they are better than the stock U dot box that comes with the regular Glocks.
Action.
Now, the sights on the PPQ are better than my 3-dot sights on my Glock. These are standard, they aren't night sights, but they do have a little bit more play between the back post and the front post, and that makes acquiring my sights a lot easier than I would on my Glock. And they do tend to sit a little bit higher. I'm kind of indifferent as far as that's concerned, but if I had to, I'd say I prefer the sights on the PPQ than I do on the Glock.
Yes, I was. Action.
Now, my Glock 19 is my concealed carry weapon for the most part, and I don't at all consider it a bullseye shooter. It is a combat accurate gun. And maybe even more so. So from that standpoint, I'm not going to drill the center hole out of a target with my Glock 19. Now, it definitely can be done. But I personally am not a bullseye shooter. I'm just not that great at it. But it is accurate enough for what you need it to do in the way it's usually deployed. Now, if I had to pick between the Walther PPQ and the Glock 19 for a bullseye shooter, I picked the Walther. And a lot of that is due to the trigger. The trigger really makes this gun a lot easier to shoot and shoot more accurately, as well as the sights there on the Walther PPQ. So, though I shot the 19 because I'm more familiar with it better, if I had to, I'd choose the Walther if I really needed to bullseye shoot. Honestly, if I had to choose between these two guns, that would be a really, really, really hard decision to make. I am partial to the 19 as I do carry the 19, and I do think the 19 tends to carry a little bit better than the Walther PPQ. But what I will say is the Walther PPQ is not above or below. I think the Walther PPQ makes a formidable alternative to the Glock 19 because the gun is really that good. And I have to say, besides the felt recoil, they're pretty much neck and neck for the most part. And I would have no problem carrying a PPQ or having to shoot the PPQ if I couldn't shoot the 19, and vice versa. Simply because I think the PPQ, though it's not in essence a Glock killer, it is on the same level as the Glock, and I don't think anybody can refute that.